Do you believe a man can control the thoughts of other persons? What would be the consequences of having such power? Let's get to know the story. Today, I'm going to discuss the science fiction and thriller movie, The Darkest Minds. Before this, if you are not a still member of our family, please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell for more stunning videos. Let's jump into the video. The year is 2043. Youngsters and teenagers are beginning to die as a result of a terrible disease that exclusively affects children. This illness is very infectious and spreads rapidly. This illness, however, is exclusively fatal to youngsters and not to adults. As a consequence of this virus, 98% of children and adolescents die, and just 2% of youngsters survive the illness, with those that do survive becoming abnormal. These youngsters develop a hazardous ability as a result of their illness. The government is urging all parents to bring their surviving kids to a camp for healing and study. At the time, President Gray says that his son Clancy has survived the illness and is now being treated at the camp for recovery, and his health is improving. Doctors and scientists at the camp categorized youngsters and their diseases into 5 categories. First, there are greens for youngsters whose intellect has grown. The second color is blue, and it is reserved for individuals with telekinesis skills. The third category consists of gold, which has the ability to control electricity. The first 3 categories are thought to be quite safe and are only handled in healing camps. The fourth group is deemed hazardous, which is red for individuals who can control fire, and the 5th group is orange, the most deadly group for those who can influence other people's thoughts. The red and orange groups are very uncommon, and the government regards them as extremely dangerous, ordering their execution on the spot. The story leads us to a scene in which a little girl called Ruby is enjoying her birthday with her parents. They are worried since all of the youngsters in the area have died, leaving just Ruby surviving. Ruby visits her mother's room at night to calm her down. When she holds her mother's hand, she gets a weird vision. Early in the morning, her mother no longer recognizes Ruby as her kid, and she requests the authorities transport Ruby to the healing camp. Finally, Ruby is transported to the healing camp along with the other youngsters. The doctor examines every kid coming to the camp to discover what abnormalities they have. Ruby is brought to the examination, where she is recognized as being orange, the most deadly category capable of controlling the minds of others. As a result, the doctor is eager to administer a fatal injection to Ruby. But Ruby is able to take control of his thoughts and persuade him that she is a green patient whose intellect has quickly increased and is not deemed threatening. On the campgrounds, there are 3 groups: green, blue, and gold, but no red or orange since they are all murdered on the spot. Ruby then lives as green in the camp. It's been 6 years. Ruby, a camp worker, gets scolded by the camp captain for making a mistake. The captain suspects Ruby of being more stupid than the other individuals there. Ruby's campé, on the other hand, attempts to protect Ruby and criticizes the camp captain, which irritates him, and as a response, the captain takes her away for punishment. In the camp, the children are mistreated. Frequency tests are often conducted later in the program. In a nutshell, this frequency test employs an extremely loud sound whose frequency can only be heard by the youngsters. Ruby panics during the frequency test, and she is brought to Dr. Kate for further evaluation. The officer learns through the examination that Ruby is an orange. Dr. Kate secretly sends Ruby a letter in which she informs her that they have found Ruby is orange and will be killed immediately. Dr. Kate instructs Ruby to meet her in the boiler room. Ruby then walks straight to the boiler room, where Dr. Kate is waiting. By that time, the alarm for an intruder has been raised and all police are sent to search for Ruby. Ruby gets to escape using Dr. Kate's vehicle with the assistance of Dr. Kate. But at the checkpoint, Ruby is nearly apprehended, but she uses her power to manipulate the policemen's minds, allowing them to escape. Ruby is finally able to leave the camp after 6 years. Kate gives Ruby a panic button in the vehicle that can be used as a tracker if she is in danger. Kate says that she is a member of the Children's League, whose goal is to rescue children from the camp while also fighting the government. Kate drives her to a petrol station where she meets her lover Rob, who is also on a kid rescue operation. When Ruby almost falls and grabs Rob's hand, she gets a vision of Rob, who seems to like torturing children. Ruby begins to question their motivations. When Ruby goes to change her clothing at a store, she encounters a little girl who has the ability to control electricity. When the girl sees Ruby, she flees, and Ruby pursues her. The girl then enters a vehicle, and Ruby pursues her in order to avoid Dr. Kate. The name of the young girl is Zoo. Zoo is accompanied by two friends, Liam and Charles. Liam is blue with the talent of telekinesis. Charles, on the other hand, is green. They agree to accompany Ruby and assist her in escaping from Cape. A lady attempts to pursue them along the way. She is Jane. Lady Jane is a professional kid hunter. Kate attempts to follow them while in pursuit. Liam, on the other hand, utilizes his telekinesis ability to annoy them by spreading leaves, breaking the road, and even knocking down trees. As a result, they were able to flee. They continue to get to know each other better as well, but Ruby refuses to disclose her true identity as orange and instead pretends to be green. Liam says that they are on their way down the East River to meet a group of youngsters headed by a mysterious figure known only as of the Slip Kid. They don't sure who the Slip Kid is, but he seems to be an orange with the ability to manipulate people's minds. Liam also explains why Dr. Kate's Children's League is not a suitable place to stay. He used to be a member of the Youngsters League, which trains children to utilize their talents to oppose the government. Because Liam disliked the notion of being a soldier, he ultimately quit the league. Later, Ruby and the others spend the night together. Ruby recalls her time with our parents, and it is revealed that she was unable to fully control her ability and, as a result, accidentally erased her parents' memory of her as a child. When Zoo is asleep, Ruby accidentally grabs Zoo's hand and then recalls Zoo being in a government camp. However, she and hundreds of other youngsters ultimately revolted and escaped. The revolt was then headed by Liam. Zoo became mute as a result of the trauma she endured at the camp. The next morning, they go for shopping and picking up supplies in a long-abandoned mall. They enjoy their time together since they have never had a typical childhood. However, their bodies are abruptly raised and controlled by a group of individuals. Zoo, fortunately, uses her electric abilities to halt them. They turn out to be a bunch of youngsters with telekinesis skills. At night, they speak about the East River Children's Association and its top-secret nature. They know where East River is, but they can't tell Ruby and her friends. They keep it a secret. Ruby, on the other hand, secretly utilizes her telepathy to make one of them unintentionally provide a hint about the location, which is the letter EDO. Later that evening, Charles, the genius, attempts to figure out what EDO is, but he comes up empty-handed. However, after chatting with Ruby about her father's job as a policeman, Charles begins to suspect that EDO is a radio frequency. He concludes that E represents 5, D represents 4, and O represents 0, and he chooses the radio frequency number 540. Finally, they get a message from the frequency and discover the location, which is similar to Prince Virginia. The following day on the journey, they are ambushed by Lady Jane, the child hunter, who utilizes the sound frequency of her rifle to keep the youngsters unconscious. Fortunately, Ruby utilizes her power to control Lady Jane's thoughts and punishes her appropriately. Liam and the others are shocked by the fact that Ruby has been orange all along. Ruby, it turns out, has been lying to them the whole time since she isn't confident in her skills. Sometime later, Ruby confesses Liam about her past, and the two begin to fall in love. They eventually continue on their trip and arrive at Lake Prince Virginia. They meet other youngsters who are similar to themselves there. They are astounded since they haven't seen so many youngsters in such a long time. They also encounter the Slip Kid, who turns out to be the son of President Clancy Gray all along. Clancy, like Ruby, is an orange. They host a party at night, and Liam and Ruby dance passionately together. Early in the morning, they are all given a task, and Ruby is tasked with assisting Clancy. Clancy informs Ruby that he was one of the first individuals to survive the horrible illness and that the government exploited him as a test subject to develop a treatment. However, the doctor failed, and his father, the president, lied to the public by claiming that they had discovered the cure. Clancy finally escaped and established a children's association where all of the children could live securely. Clancy then teaches Ruby how to harness her power and influence other people's thoughts. Ruby eventually succeeds by touching their hands. Ruby, in exchange, teaches him how to wipe people's memories. During this time, Clancy takes control of her mind and attempts to kiss her. Ruby is upset, so she punches him and walks away. Ruby and her friends eventually decide to leave. However, while on the run, they are attacked by camp soldiers. Liam attempts to fight back, but he suddenly falls unconscious. Clancy, it turns out, has rendered him unconscious. Clancy is shown to have been the brains behind it all. While Clancy calls the camp captain and requested to arrest all of the youngsters. Clancy has been manipulating his father, the president, and utilizing his position to take control of the country. His primary aim is to raise an army of superpowered children so that he will never be abused by anybody. Ruby then uses her ability to force the camp captain to commit suicide, while Zoo manipulates electricity to devise an escape plan. Armed forces came unexpectedly with helicopters to arrest all of the youngsters. The soldiers brought the youngsters in the red group who are capable of controlling fire. It turns out that the government has secretly armed them, and they set fire to the camp. Finally, the fight begins. The Red Army attempts to burn Liam and his companions, but Liam retaliates by using his strength. But then Clancy appears in the midst of the fight and minutely recounts the thoughts of all the youngsters there. Liam and the others are compelled to flee the area, leaving Ruby behind, because only Ruby has the capacity to confront Clancy. She utilizes it to build her army. Clancy, on the other hand, demonstrates his brutal nature by controlling their minds to murder themselves by shooting one another. Clancy then attempts to exploit his new memory of racing abilities to sway Ruby to his side and make her forget about her friends. However, Ruby utilizes her power to manipulate the pilot's thoughts, resulting in a helicopter crash and explosion. Ruby escapes the explosion with the aid of Charles, but Charles is burnt and badly wounded, giving Ruby little option but to activate her panic button to contact the Children's League for assistance. The next morning, the League team arrives to take them all up. Charles is sent to the hospital for treatment, while Zoo is adopted by a loving family. However, Liam is detained by the League because he has betrayed the League previously, and the League believes Liam knows too much about the League to be free. Ruby meets Kate and bargains for Liam's freedom by offering to join the League and fight with them against the government. Kate, on the other hand, has said that Liam would never leave without Ruby, and he will not allow Ruby to join the League. Ruby finally meets Liam. Liam says that he wants the two of them to remain together and talk about their future plans. However, Ruby is compelled to delete herself from Liam's memory in order for Liam to be freed and for her to join and fight against a children's league. All memories of Ruby, including their initial contact in the van, talking and dancing together, have vanished from his mind. Suddenly, Liam has no recollection of Ruby and he departs. Ruby then cries as she watches Liam go away. At the conclusion of the story, Ruby joins the Children's League and begins training. But there's more to do this. Ruby and her companion's fight is far from done, as it comes out that Clancy is still alive and a violent conflict between the two sides is unavoidable. So, the viewers, this is all we have today. Please share your opinion in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel for more videos and hit a like button if you like this video. Thanks for your time.